You've heard the song and dance 1,000 times. The film industry has a film that winds up being, dare we say, a cult classic. A work that didn't have an incredible amount of success when it, premiered, but over time a dedicated fan base breathed new life into it and created a franchise. And this is especially true for the franchise-driven Hollywood we've seen in the 2020s. So, when it was announced that in January of 2022, there would be a Scott Pilgrim anime, I was hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. And now we're 22 months later, and the show came out when I'm recording this today. I immediately sat down to watch the show, and honestly I expected it to follow the same exact beats as the movie. Each episode would have Scott face off with one evil X at a time, usually with a few twists thrown in for some good measure, and then he'd inevitably keep Ramona. I was expecting it to just go the same thing, but as an anime. But as I tuned into the first episode, it was going as planned up until the ending. And going forwards, I'm gonna warn you that we're gonna be getting into the crazy and buck wild ways that this show changed its source material. And I'm warning you about that in advance because this show's best on a blind watch. I've literally not heard any spoilers because I watched it right when it came out. And if you've been trending on blind, click off this video. Subscribe, then click off this video and watch this after you finish the show. It's only 4 hours, so it should be pretty good. And you've been warned now. But, so, let's just get into this, and you're gonna see me gushing, okay? So, the big divulging point is at the Scott versus Matthew Patel fight at the end of the first episode, the first Evil X. In the movie, Scott wins, but in the show, Matthew gets the win here, and Scott's presumed dead at his hands, and every other episode proceeds to take a completely different direction from anything seen in this franchise before. Episode 2 has Scott's funeral, attended by Envy Adams of all people, and the start of the questioning on his whereabouts, but also establishes the League of Evil X's way more prevalently, with Scott's death really disrupting the fabric of the League, because it was Patel, the first Evil X, who killed him, and Patel gets his chance to coup the League from Gideon in what honestly was a rather shocking display. Suspicions then really emerge on, was Scott kidnapped? And Ramona gets ready to set out and find who kidnapped the guy of her dreams. Episodes 3 through 5, following up on this, give focus to several of the other X's, Roxy, Lucas, and Todd respectively per episodes, as Ramona's hunt continues and she puts each of them in context that we've just not seen the characters in before. And then episode 6 does a similar deal for Gideon, and Scott's virtually absent for these episodes as the focus is really shifted to the rest of the cast. And I'm gonna get into that later about what I'm really impressed with how the show handled everything. So episode 7 meanwhile shows where Scott's been on the whole thing, because he's not dead, he has been kidnapped, and it's what's happening in the time travel shenanigans that the events have on the timeline. And 8 brings everything home and unites the entirety of the cast for one final battle in a pretty cool display. On a blind watch, the series is insanely refreshing, as I wasn't really expecting it to divulge from the source material where it did. Meanwhile, it wound up crafting really unique versions of so many of these characters. In fact, some of these are by far and away my favorite versions out of this and the movie. I'm not much of an expert on this franchise, but I think that should be good to say, right? That they do some of these characters the justice that the movie couldn't give them. Ramona honestly operates incredibly as the actual protagonist for the story, making it feel like with this franchise, the shoe could be on the other foot, and her and Scott's love is genuinely that strong enough for each other. Peaceful resolutions that she has with the conflicts also wind up keeping every major character around to the end. No one dies in this, and they each have the chance to stick with you. But I think the character who got the biggest improvement for me is Wallace Wells of all people, who went from a character who kind of just existed as Scott's gay roommate to consistently the funniest part of this entire series, with him usurping his actor on a film set that's an adaptation of Scott's life, and the writers just made him feel so much more alive with a brand new relationship sort of established to him that I had never seen before on this character, right? Because the film basically wastes Wallace, I'm not gonna lie to you. But the relationship's consistently one of the funniest bits about this entire show. Episode 5's probably one of the funniest episodes, and Wallace is to thank for that. Another character who I feel got a lot more to do, especially during that whole 3 through 5 bit is young Neil, who his version in this gets a very similar vibe from Todd from BoJack. In the most loving ways possible, it feels like they're really evolving a character who did practically nothing in the movie, right? Like, that was the whole shtick for him. He was young, he sat on the couch. I think that's how it went. I've not seen the movie in a little bit. With this series, though, certain characters get the short end of the stick. The twins remain the least compelling of the exes, feeling very forgettable, even in their greater scale role in this, technically. Then there's Roxy, who after she has her highlight episode, feels like an afterthought in a show that's kept a lot of these characters running around. And the other character who gets shafted is Knives, honestly. Knives has her whole thing with the band with like Steven and stuff. But after that, she feels like just another one of Scott's bandmates and doesn't really do too much. Envy gets to be kind of invisible, to be honest. She also does a lot in episode 5, has a bit in episode 2. Not much else that I remember about her. She's kind of just around for the sake of having Envy Adams around, right? There's a bit with Black Sheep, that's cool. So as someone who's also never read the graphic novels, right? Even in the film, Stacy, Steven, and Julie don't really have their moments in the sun as characters. That stays the same for this show. I don't think they really stand out too much past being characters established for the past, but they rarely do anything for the plot of either mediums that I've seen the story in. Even with these critiques that I've been giving to the show, right? This is still fine, right? Like, the show's juggling 16 real characters and a twin. You get to decide which one's actually real. But adaptations are a perfect chance for a work to play with the characters it has at its hand, which the show does beautifully. Not to mention that the advertising did an amazing job hiding the twists and turns and keep them so close to the chest, so that when the what if style changes took place, I never expected it. And I respect that a lot. The show's great, but I also respect the show's fire animation. So this show's consistently like beautiful looking, from its colors to how it translated the character designs to some of the most fantastic fight scenes that you're not going to expect. Like, none of them are, aside from like one, Scott versus an X, right? There's 8 major fights, 1 per episode, and they all deliver some of the most fun action I've seen in any project, film or TV all year. And I'm not going to go fully in on all of them, but my personal highlight was everything in episode 4 between Lucas Lee and the paparazzi, which made him feel like such a cool character with the skateboard fight. And it just was very impressive, honestly. But like, each of the fights are to that level to an extent, right? They're all these major action set pieces, character building moments. It's the best of what fights from anime often provide, built in this setting. One of the only major issues I have is there's something with the animation where how it feels a little blurry at times and out of focus, and it kind of strained my eyes. So warning about that before you go in, slash if you did go in, you know. And then also obligatory like seizure warning. So yeah, no, it could cause that, so be safe if you have epilepsy. The last sort of major complaint I have is that I feel like episodes 6 and 7 felt weaker than the general run of the show. They're still good stories and they give light to the characters, but the whole future plotline is just a little bit weirder and less funny than the rest of the show. But I'd give the show a solid 8 out of 10. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a really solid fun ride that will be talked about for years like the actual movie. Everyone from the crew to the cast went above and beyond to explore parts of this franchise that we've not really seen explored yet. And if they do a season 2, I'm really curious where they're going to be taking the direction of this media that they're working with. But that's really all I have to say for now, so thank you guys for watching. And if you liked this video, drop a subscribble, because I'll have more videos coming out in the near future. Peace, have an amazing day.